Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Football Betting Series here on YouTube Premier League Edition. Our patchy December continues as we have 14 wins, 7 losses, and 1 push. And we're still in the red with minus £26. However, hopefully by this time next week, we'll find ourselves in the green once again. Taking a look at our overall record, we're standing at 87 wins, 35 losses, and 15 pushes for a total season profit of £471.91. I've got 3 selections in today's episode, so if you think I'm talking some sense, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Without further ado, let's get into it. Our first selection sees 11th place Brentford playing host to 4th place Nottingham Forest. And Brentford, they were beaten in their last game against Chelsea. Chelsea were dominant in the first half, so it was perhaps no surprise when Cucurella made the breakthrough just before the half-time interval. A second goal was then added by Nico Jackson in the 80th minute to end the contest, and Mbeumo did pick up a consolation goal, but it was a case of too little too late. 2-1 to Chelsea was the final score. In terms of form, this does mean it's quite mixed for the Bees. 2 wins and 2 losses in their last form is pretty average, and it does see the Bees nestle into a mid-table position as a result. They play a Nottingham Forest side who, despite going down 1-0 thanks to Duran's flicked header, managed to battle back at the end of the game. Milinkovic's header was bundled into the net by Martinez for his first Premier League goal of the season, and that levelled up the scores in the 87th minute. But the game was far from over, as in the 3rd minute of stoppage time, Elliot Anderson won the ball back just outside the Aston Villa box. He thrashed the ball across the face for Anthony Elanga to dispatch coolly, giving Nottingham Forest the 2-1 win right at the death. In terms of form, this result did make it back-to-back wins for Nuno's side. 3 wins in their last 4 has also propelled them into 4th place in the division, something which I don't think anyone saw coming this season. In terms of head-to-head record, last time around Brentford came out on top at the G-Tech. It was a back-and-forth kind of game with both sides taking the lead and levelling the scores, but it was Neil Maupay that popped up with the winner for the Bees in the 68th minute, 3-2 the final score. That result continued a Brentford unbeaten streak over Forest, unbeaten in the last 6 competitive encounters, which is a record dating back to December of 2020. My prediction for today's game is that form is pretty unreliable for both sides, and the head-to-head would have you leaning towards Brentford here. However, Forest are very strong away from home, and it's scaring me off that Brentford position, but I do like the case for goals here. Brentford have seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 3 matches, and in 9 of their last 10 Premier League games. At home as well, they've seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 5 and 8 of their last 9 matches at the G-Tech. Whereas Nottingham Forest, they've seen over 2.5 goals in both of their last 2 games and in 7 of their last 8 Premier League games. Away from home, they've seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 4 and 5 of their last 6 travels. In terms of the head-to-head record, 3 of the last 4 encounters have also seen over 2.5 goals, including both of the last 2 at the G-Tech. Therefore, I'm going to be taking over 2.5 goals for a full stake in bet number 1. Our second selection sees 14th place West Ham playing host to 9th place Brighton. And West Ham, they were held to a draw in their last game on the road against Bournemouth. Paqueta put the Irons ahead from the penalty spot late on in the game. However, that lead did only last for 3 minutes before Enes Unal levelled the scores in the 90th minute so that both sides shared the spoils. Numbers-wise, perhaps 1-1 doesn't really show how many chances were created in the match. Both teams combined for 45 shots and a combined XG of 4.07 on the south coast. In terms of form for West Ham, despite the late goal, they have managed to avoid defeat once again. They're now unbeaten in their last 2 matches. That keeps them just ahead of the relegation-threatened teams behind them. They play a Brighton side who were bested by their rivals Crystal Palace in their last match, losing 3-1 in what was a great example of an away performance for the Eagles. Brighton had a lot of the ball in the first 15 minutes of both halves, but were ultimately unable to get the breakthrough against an informed Dean Henderson in the Palace net. In terms of form, this does mean that the Seagulls are now winless in their last 4 as they do begin their slide down the table. In terms of the head-to-head record, last game at the Olympic Stadium was a goalless affair. However, I'm not quite sure how the visiting side Brighton didn't manage to find the back of the net. They had 22 efforts, 8 of which were on target, and this all combined for an XG of 2.38 on the road. In terms of recent form between these sides, it's very mixed. 1 win for each side and a draw thrown in there in the last 3 matches. My prediction for today's game is that both sides have struggled for form of late, and I find it tricky to back a side either way, but I am looking at goals. West Ham have seen over 2.5 goals in 3 of their last 4 Premier League games. And really, the Bournemouth match could have seen at least another goal go in as well to make it 4 from 4. In terms of home games in the Premier League, each of the last 2 and 9 of the last 10 games at the Olympic Stadium have seen over 2.5 goals. That dates back to the end of last season in April. The away side, Brighton, they've seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 3 Premier League matches and in 8 of the last 9 matches across all competitions. They've also seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 4 away games. Finally, looking at the head-to-head record, over 2.5 goals have gone in 2 of the last 3 encounters. But when we isolate for just West Ham's home games, none of the last 3 have seen over 2.5 goals. So with all this in mind, I am still tempted for the over 2.5 position, but in light of the poor head-to-head data, I will temper things with a half stake here in bet number 2. Our third and final selection is a relegation battle match, and it sees 17th place Leicester City playing host to 19th place Wolverhampton. And the Foxes, they were beaten badly in their last game away to Newcastle. Newcastle's first half pressure paid off in the 30th minute as Jacob Murphy got the breakthrough for the Magpies. From there on, Leicester City did fold. They conceded 3 more goals in the second half to go on to lose 4 goals to 0. And looking at the stats, it is as bad as it sounds. Newcastle won on every major win predictor statistic, and Leicester had no chance to come back into the game as they only took 4 shots with just a single effort on target. In terms of form, that loss may represent the end of the new manager bounce for Van Nistelrooy. After a brief 2-game unbeaten run, the Foxes have won just 1 of their last 9 matches across all competitions, and they're edging ever closer to the drop. Speaking of sides who struggle to win, Wolves tasted defeat once again in their last match thanks to a last-minute winner from Jack Taylor of Ipswich Town. Stats-wise, the game was fairly evenly contested, but Wolves really lacked that final bit of quality in the final third in this match, and they needed the individual effort of Kuna to bring them level. Set-piece issues raised their heads once again as Wolves conceded their 16th goal in 16 games from dead ball situations. In terms of form, that does mean it's 4 losses in a row for Wolves, and they've now conceded 40 goals across the league, or an average of 2.5 goals per game. With form like that, and losing to a relegation rival, it's not too much of a shock to see that O'Neill was shown the door. In terms of the head-to-head records, the last match between these 2 sides came in April of 2023. Leicester City managed to pick up a 2-1 win at the King Power, overturning Kuna's opening goal with strikes from Iheanacho and Castagna. This result did make it back-to-back wins for Leicester City, and they're unbeaten in 7 of the last 8 meetings against Wolverhampton. In terms of prediction, I'm looking at goals for this game. Leicester have seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 6 matches, and in each of their last 4 games at home, whereas Wolverhampton, they've seen over 2.5 goals in each of their last 4 games, and away from home, it's 7 in a row. When we look at the head-to-head record, each of the last 3 encounters between these sides have seen over 2.5 goals. So with all of this in mind, I'm going to back over 2.5 goals for a full stake in the final bet of today's episode. So there we have it, 3 picks in today's episode, all of which are over 2.5 goals, but I'm going to run through them anyway. In the first game, it's Brentford versus Forest, over 2.5 goals, odds of 1.71, a £40 stake to return 28.40. We've also got West Ham Brighton, over 2.5 goals, odds of 1.51, a £20 half stake to return 10.20. And on the Sunday, Leicester Wolves, over 2.5 goals, odds of 1.66, a £40 stake to return 26.40. So across the weekend, we're going to be risking £100 to hopefully pick up as much as £65 exactly. Will we do so? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that's to tune into next episode. But if you have made it to this point in the video, please drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more content. Don't forget to check out the continental picks in the pinned comment down below. And as always, have yourself a lovely day.